Hello everyone and welcome back to the Earth to the Moon podcast. I am your command module pilot, Andy, and joining me as ever is the lunar module pilot, Elton.
Hello.
How you doing, sir?
Good. This is early morning for us to do this as well.
Oh, it's far too early in the morning. I'm still kind of slightly jet lagged. It's just this is fortunately this should be a short one, but I have an important question.
Yeah, go on.
So if I'm the command module pilot and you're the lunar module pilot, who's the commander? Who is in charge of this damn thing?
That's a question. I hadn't prepared for that question either. So
I know I like to just spring these things on you. I could say it's a bit late in the game to be asked, worrying about this because we're like episode 7 into a 12 episode season. But
yeah, it kind of is, isn't it?
Yeah. But there you go.
If we'd thought about it before, we would have got a third person on it to do the whole thing. But yeah. Wow.
Never mind. No, I was going to take. So I've just been off in the US. As listeners may or may not know.
All right, nice. Stop showing off.
Yeah, a little bit. Pulling a few wheelies here. But while I was there, I went to see the USS Hornet.
Yeah.
Now, the USS Hornet was the recovery ship for Apollo 11 and Apollo 12. And on board, they actually have, when Neil first stepped off the helicopter, they got him to walk through paint. And his footsteps are on the deck of the Hornet.
They got him to walk through paint?
Yes.
In the boots that he was walking on the moon, or just his normal lightweight shoes?
The covers he had over his shoes.
Right.
Yes. But still, it's kind of cool that his first steps back on Earth are recorded as well for prosperity.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Also, they have that Airstream trailer thing, the mobile quarantine unit there, which was last used by Apollo 14. But that is a story for another day.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to asking questions about that, actually.
Ah, cool. But anyway, we're here to talk about Apollo 13 again. But people might be getting deja vu thinking, but Andy, Elton, you've already done Apollo 13. Why, it was the first episode of your cast.
'Twas indeed.
'Twas indeed, and you would be correct. This is the episode we interrupt this program, which deals with events of Apollo 13 from the perspective of the ground entirely. Yeah. In fact, with the exception of some archive footage from the news broadcast at the very beginning of the episode and audio transmissions between Houston and 13, we don't see anything of the astronauts at all.
Mm.
A little bit different.
Yeah. I think it slightly hinders the episode, though. Possibly.
I think it was a nice way to do it. It gave you, because again, one of the things you don't really get is, especially when you watch the film Apollo 13, the drama feels very kind of real with the music playing and you're cutting between mission control, trying to understand it, and the command module. Whereas here, it's just the audio and transmissions, which again, if you go on YouTube, you can actually listen to the mission transcripts, which it's very weird because these are calm professionals effectively just reading through checklists. And you're thinking, but I remember it being much more dramatic than this.
Yeah, exactly.
But, it's a disconnect, I suppose, between the use of just the voices to what we see in the film with the astronauts. I have another little bit of trivia for you. So of the astronauts involved in the Apollo program, 32 in total, this series portrays 30 of them. And one of the astronauts we never see is Jack Swigert.
Uh-huh.
I just thought that was interesting.
Because he was on this one, wasn't he?
He was on Apollo 13 and, wasn't largely... he was involved in the program. He designed the abort procedures, but the series just hasn't really dwelled upon him. So, if anyone is interested, we have seen Jim Lovell before. He was portrayed by Tim Daly as the Gemini 7 and Gemini 12 ones, and he was in the Apollo 8 episode way back when. And Fred Hayes also, I don't know if we've seen him so far, but we will see him in the Apollo 14 episode as the Capcom. Oh, it's Adam Baldwin playing him.
Oh, well, one of the Baldwin brothers.
One of the Baldwins. Yes, Jane from Firefly, for those who are so inclined. He's also Mike Slattery on The Last Ship. So there you go.
Right, okay. Is he an official Baldwin, or is he a different Baldwin?
He is an official Baldwin.
He's an official Baldwin.
Yes. He is an official.
Isn't there a Baldwin that isn't an official Baldwin?
Possibly. You'll have to ask an expert, of which I am not one.
I'm sure there is.
But we're dancing around this a little bit, so let me just ask you straight up. Do you like this episode?
No.
No,
didn't enjoy this one bit. Do you know what? I did enjoy the blackness of the screen when you could hear the astronauts' voices.
I like that bit. I still prefer this episode over the Apollo 8 episode because I feel my issues with this are kind of not so much the issues with the episode itself, just with stuff it brings up. Warning people, this will get a bit ranty in a little while. But it's still more coherent. I mean, it just feels like a single cohesive story, whereas Apollo 8 still feels like three different things that kind of bounce all over the place.
Yeah.
So there's that. But yeah, I mean, we kind of start off at the very beginning with, again, archive footage, which is nice from the thing, and, you know, the problem, the O2 tank exploding.
Yeah.
As we later found out. I quite like the Sam Seaborn character, who's kind of very much in the vein of a Walter Cronkite, like, newsman, you know, an actual kind of have you seen that one with George Clooney? Is it Good Night and Good Luck?
No, I haven't seen that. No.
It's that vision of like the 1960s trusted face of the news, someone who, you know, will there and comfort you and guide you through kind of terrifying events that might be going on in the world that you might not fully understand, but is a comforting voice and face who is there to kind of just almost a parental figure who will be there to say, this is scary. I know this is scary, but we're going to get through this together. Mm-hmm. I like him.
Yeah, I've just realised where I recognise him from as well. From Lois and Clark.
Yes, he was Pa Kent. I can't remember what his first name was.
Yeah.
Of course, in this particular instance, he wasn't the. Oh no, he wasn't. He was Perry White, but he wasn't in like a Man of Steel. Hating on Superman.
No. He's another one of them actors where you know the voice, you know the face, haven't got a clue what his name is.
Yeah, he's just kind of in everything. And yeah, you know, again, he's just a good, solid staple of television throughout the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
and so forth. So we have him, and you know, he's a fictional character playing Emmett Seaborn, kind of based off of a whole Walter Cronkite type character. Then we have Brett Hutchinson. Now, I watched this on the plane, and I made a couple of notes when I was doing this. I'm going to read you my notes verbatim. So, at the beginning, kind of when he wants to interview the families, I put, Brett Hutchinson, he's a cock, you know, wanting to interview the families. And then some time goes by, and later on, you go, no, actually, Brett Hutchinson, he's an utter cunt. Mm-hmm. That was the evolution of that character there. I despise this character, and I despise what journalism has become. I warned you all this was going to get ranty. I'm kicking off now. Yep. Okay? No,
go for it, man. Go for it.
Because I don't give a shit what the family is going through. I can well imagine. It's none of my damn business. And the weak-ass argument, I go, well, don't you think the public's got a right to know they've been on the gravy train? Well, no, frankly, I don't think the families did sign up for this. I don't think they have been feasting on the government dime and any bollocks, and I don't think you've got a right to be there. Fuck off. I want the news. I don't want sensationalist bullshit. It's shit like that has destroyed our society and has got us into the fucking mess we're in right now. It's shit like that has led to Trump. It's shit like that that's led to Brexit. Fuck you, Brett Hutchinson. Fuck you squarely in the fucking ear. Oh, Jesus Christ. And I will remind everyone, it's early on a Sunday morning here, so this has really had me worked up for a few days. But I know he's a fictional character, but this here, Apollo and the going to the moon, height of civilization, high watermark. This here is the pulling the plug out of the fucking civilization and has led to us to the cesspool we find ourselves in today.
Oh, this is the absolute opposite of what the Apollo was all about, wasn't it?
He's a slimy motherfucker. Just kind of his face. I want to punch his face.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's a lie. I want to hold his face underneath an F1 engine during launch. He's such a slimy, just disgusting, self-serving. He doesn't give a damn about the families. He doesn't give a damn about the public wanting to know. All he's focused on is himself and getting that sensationalist story, not waiting to understand the truth. He is everything I hate about modern journalists, modern media. Fake news. He is pure fake news. I hate him. And this is the thing. This is why I don't hate the episode as much as I hate him and what it portrays. And I think it's good it's portrayed it. It really annoys me. And I'm like, no, I don't want this. Go away. I don't want to acknowledge that this is how society ends because of people like him.
Well, okay, right. We're into the review proper now, aren't we? So I can just dive in. Yeah,
right. Dive in. Yeah, gloves are off, mate.
The thing I didn't like about this episode, and there are bits I did like, but they are very few and far between.
Yeah,
but it's just its core where this isn't really about anything with the space program. It's a journalistic view of two journals going at each other. And it's just their bitter rivalry, which kind of ruins one's career and trying to hype up another one's career. And it's got really nothing to do with the subject matter that I came here to watch.
Oh, I have to disagree with you there.
Oh, no,
saying this has nothing to do with the space program. It very much does. And again, it ties into why we stopped going to the moon, why they stopped funding it, because people weren't interested anymore. It's okay. So there was an experimental aircraft in the 60s called the TSR-2.
Yeah.
And it was a fantastic aircraft. It was way ahead of its time. It was British, but it was cancelled in the mid 60s. And the designer basically said, look, all aircraft have 4 dimensions: length, width, span, and politics. TSR-2 could only get the first 3 right. And it ties into this. The Apollo mission, it had to balance all the scientific and technological aspects of it, but it was also the political side of it. And the way you get the politicians on side to fund it is by getting the public involved and engaged. And that also ties into why NASA effectively, I really like when they were giving him a cold shoulder. And I'm like, yes, screw that guy. But then you get the guy in charge basically saying, you can't do that to him. We need them on side to fund future missions. So I understand why they've done it. I just hate that they've done it. So while I agree with you that it's annoying, I don't think it's fair to say it has nothing to do with it, because it is a part of it. It is the aspect of you've got to keep the public on side, especially now they've won the space race effectively.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. By the way, I've just gone to the TSR-2 Wikipedia page and there's pictures of it up at Duxford. There's one in Duxford.
There's one in Duxford and there's one in Cosford. We should do a trip to Cosford at some point. You know what we should do? Little production meeting on the side here. We should go to Duxford, you and I, and we should do like a Shonky Lab there, just walking around.
Yeah, I'll be up for that. I love that place.
Cool. There
Absolutely,
you go. There's Hendon around the corner from me as well. So there you go. Anyway,
yeah.
Back to Apollo. But yeah, I feel that it's a story that was worth telling, and I mean it's right because we saw this in the film as well. With no network was carrying the news broadcast because you make going to the moon about as exciting as a trip to the shops or to Pittsburgh, and also later on when they want to erect the tower on Marilyn's lawn, and she says, if no one was interested when he was going to the moon, why should they care now he's not going to the moon?
Yeah.
And if you have a problem with it, speak to my husband. He'll be back on Friday. The press does play a role in this, and I do. I think it's important people understand that it is. Because people buy into this sensationalistic, bloody, you go, oh, what do the families think? And, we want to get shots of a poor boy crying because his dad's on the moon. He's not young enough to really understand what's going on here. But we're going to broadcast pictures of it. We're going to ambush the elderly parents of one of these astronauts just so we can get those pictures. It's like, you are scum of the lowest order, sir. You are.
Yeah, that's okay. I get it. It is important, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I was a bit misjudged in what I said there, but I still feel at the heart of this, it really doesn't feel like there's anything to do with Apollo 13 at all. It's just the bitter rivalry of journals going at each other. And I feel that detracts from everything that we've watched before.
I do feel, I agree with you in that it doesn't feel, it feels like the Apollo mission it's a different story. This is the story about the journalist.
It's not even like the fourth most important thing in this episode. It's way down there.
Yeah, I agree that this feels like something else. I mean, I guess what they're saying is, look, we already kind of covered the command module and the lunar module in the film. We pretty well covered mission control, and we pretty well covered the family in the film. So what aspect can we do for this that's different?
Yeah, because they have to include it in there, don't they?
Oh, yeah, and you don't want to retread old ground because it's already been done. I mean, I like how they kind of got Clint Howard back, and although he's technically playing a different character, you don't really know that, and you've got that direct connection now. I mean, you could almost splice this into the film, and because again, except for that final scene with Gene, they always kind of show him from the back throughout there. So you could almost splice this into the film as bonus material, I suppose.
Yeah, I just think there's more interesting stories to go. Look, I get that it's a nice different view of this story that we don't really get to see, the one from the Earth, because everyone experienced that who was alive experiencing it. And when you go black screen and just voices, that's what they would have heard and seen. That's all they would have got. And so I like that perspective.
Yeah, but you can't do 40 minutes of just black screen with dialogue. As much as I would love it, you can't do it.
I understand that, but a couple of years ago there was a straight to TV movie created about the Challenger disaster, and it was about this guy who was battling cancer as well, but he was also trying to prove exactly what happened and what went wrong. About
Richard Feynman, the scientist, and I would just say that's a fantastic film. Yeah, and people should watch it. And Lane Smith's in it as well, interestingly enough.
Right. Yeah, I absolutely adore that movie. I think I found it on TV once and watched it, and then I think it got deleted off my hard drive. Nowadays, back in the day, I would have probably ripped off the tabs on the VHS and then kept it forever. But alas, you can't do that when people just press delete on your hard drive and it's like, oh, it's gone. But anyway, that's another aside. I feel that was going into the logistics of what went wrong with the Challenger disaster. I think you had an opportunity to do that with this and go into the in-depths of
it. You mean
why it happened?
Do it post. No, that'd be cool. I would. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'd have watched that.
I think that would have been more. Well, it depends on what you could have got, because everything that was destroyed was kind of like burnt up in the atmosphere after a little while, wasn't it? So there's no really hard evidence.
There's also, I think, the investigation was kind of running parallel to other missions, because, Apollo 13 launched in 1970, April 1970, and 14 launched in, man, look something on internet, 14 launched in January of 71. So you got a good, because again, 11, 12 and 13 all launched within 6 months of each other. Mm. Then you've got nine or so months before the next one. So they paused, but not like a massive one, not like Challenge, because after Challenger, I think it was 3 years before another shuttle launched.
Oh, it was grounded for a long, long time, wasn't it?
Well, 86 was, Challenger, and I don't think Discovery launched until 88 or 89.
Right.
And even then, it was still more of a test launch. And again, when Columbia burnt up in 2003, and I don't think that launched again until maybe 2006, 2007. So yeah, there was a long old investigation there. I also don't think because again, part of the Challenger story is there was the cover up, or effectively the blame game between the guys who made the Firecall, who made the boosters, NASA, and again trying to ride the press and keep public on side for that sort of stuff. So I just don't think maybe there's just not enough drama, finger quote, in the story for the investigation for Apollo 13. I don't know. I mean, you're right. You could have done a flashback thing. There's lots of different ways you can do it. But I do think that the press is an important part of the Apollo story. And if you have to tell that story, I don't know where else you can do it.
No, look, I get it. It doesn't mean I have to like it, though.
No, no one's saying you have to like it. I agree with you there. I still prefer this over the Apollo 8 story because, like I said, this feels like a more coherent story. But it's my second to last favorite episode so far.
Yeah, there are scenes where you got Emmett coming up to what's his name? I can't remember his name. Brett, is it? Sorry.
Brett. Even the name Brett. Yeah. I'm sorry if there's anyone out there called Brett listening to this, but
sorry, Brett.
It's just
But when he's coming up to him and saying, "Look, this is not what we do," and having a go at him just as he's just about to go on live TV, and it's just, look, I get it, I understand it. We're supposed to hate this guy, but you doing that as well is kind of making me not quite like you. I think that's the thing. There are no characters, even though we've had Emmett throughout this series. We've had him in snippets, haven't we? And he's the only one to drop an F-bomb as well. And I don't feel attached to anyone in this episode.
You see that I feel really bad for Emmett because I see that I see him as effectively trying to hold on to the dignity of his profession.
No, he's trying to hold on to his job and not go with what's actually the momentum of the job, because it is going to go into this horrible scandalist type reporting.
I personally don't see it as, I mean, maybe you're right, but I don't see it as him looking at it as a personal standpoint for him. I think he's saying, look, this is not what we do. Saying we're not here to, and you're right, it was a bit of an old boys club. You can definitely see that there. And maybe if he was nice to Brett in the first place, this wouldn't have happened. But I don't see this so much as he was being self-serving, so much as it used to be said the news is a sacred trust, because you hold great power there. And this is why, I mean, can you name for me any news anchors that are currently out there right now? I mean, maybe Jon Snow. But outside of that, I can't name any of them for you. But you used to have Moira Stewart, Trevor McDonald, John Suchet. These guys who used to be on the news at like 6 and at 10 to give you the news. Even the guy who used to do News Round does Country File now.
John Craven.
John Craven. My point is, these guys were a voice who would, they would explain the news, which would have been well researched, because the news isn't on 24 hours a day, they have the time to do the research. And you see that with Emmett as well. Before he goes on, he's on the phone saying, is it this? Is it this? Can you tell me this is what it is? He's not wildly speculating in that sense.
No, he's not making stuff up, is he?
He's informed. And while, yes, they want to be the first out there, they don't want to be wrong. He doesn't want to speculate if there isn't a grounding there.
Yeah, there's none of this, a spokesman says.
Yeah, we're getting early reports that, now we haven't confirmed this, but we're going to report it anyway. There's none of that. He is taking the time. He's doing actual journalism. He's, again, bits like where, he sneaks out to go and corner the guy in the toilet. I know it sounds dodgy, but trust me, it made sense. But, he wants to understand what's going on. He understands the Apollo thing because, he spent the last God knows how many years working on this.
Yeah.
Whereas with Brett and with journalists and reporters today, no, it's just like, you don't serve the news, you serve yourself. And that's what you see with Brett. He doesn't serve the news. He doesn't serve the public interest. He's there to serve himself. He's there because he wants to be famous. You hear when they say, oh, come and do this, because he's a baseball guy. Come and, do the thing. And he goes, oh, I'd love to do this, but I have to get this story. I've got to get this hot take. I've got to get this out there,
Yeah.
Again, people going up to the little girl saying, hey, can I use your phone? And then sneaking into a garden and climbing up a fucking tree. I mean, Jesus Christ, man. The fuck?
It's the birth of paparazzi, isn't it?
Exactly. And Emmett, I don't think would ever. He doesn't do that, He again, the things like with the ambushing of Swigert's parents, you don't do that. You don't ambush old parents thing. You don't publish this story like that. When he says, look, it's a sacred trust. It's a thing. And you're right. There were instances where it went too far the other way, where perhaps the press and the government and all that were maybe too cozy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's gone so far the other way now, where, the reason why people get traction shouting out things like fake news is because so often it is fake, or at least uninformed. It's so often the case now where people have run to be the first. They've reported the wrong thing. We had the tragic news about a van in Germany yesterday.
Yeah.
As soon as it happened, up to 14 people might have been killed. And it turns out 2 people were killed, one of them being the guy driving the van in there. But people are reporting stuff before they've had a chance to actually do due diligence, before they had a chance to research it, because they just want to be first. And that is what will bring down society.
Well, that's the way of the world at the moment. It is because they want instant gratification of what's happened. Everyone wants to be famous because they were there on site, videoing it in vertical. You idiots. Don't do that. Every news channel in the world should turn around and say, right, veto on any vertical film at all. Because if I was in charge of a station, I'd be like, right, okay, bring all the stuff in. Okay, right, that's vertical, that's vertical, that's vertical. It doesn't get on. It just doesn't get on. There's no question. It doesn't get on. And that's the thing. People are in such a panic that they want to just be there and be first, and they'll shout out things. And we all know what these whispers are like as well. You can turn around and say something in a company and say, oh, well, something happened to someone. And then 10 minutes later, you've heard it back again, but 3 things have happened to 7 people. And it's like, no, it's bullshit. They really need to clamp down on it. And I agree with you with this fake news. If you're going to do it, you've got to do it right.
It's got to be fake news.
I hate that saying.
Yeah.
Although there is a tendency for me to agree that there is too much of this, because it's just poor journalism instead of actually being fake. It's just hurried, rushed, and not true. Not fake, but it's not true, not entirely accurate. And that's what I think the problem is. And I think, I don't know whether they're trying to get this from this story here in this episode, but are they trying to suggest that this is the birth of that sort of journalism?
I think that's how I took it. That my reading was this was the death of that sort of journalism, and again, the death of civilization, in my not so humble opinion.
Yeah. Well, you've got the I don't want to say it, but you got the old reporter and the up and coming reporter, and it's kind of in one corner you got the old reporter who likes to sit down with a big pipe and just ponder on the news that he's got, and he's got 20 minutes to reflect and make some phone calls and speak about it. And then you got the new person who's gathering information as much as he can. It doesn't matter how he gathers that information, and it doesn't matter how good or bad certain people look. As long as I get it in there and I look good, then who gives a crap?
Yeah. And it erodes that trust.
Yeah.
And once that trust is gone, it's very hard to get it back.
Yeah. Oh, man. It makes me... if this wasn't part of From the Earth to the Moon, I think I would like it. It just feels so soap opera-y, though.
Especially since both of these main characters are fictional.
Mm.
You know, I mean, they are kind of constructs, so we've got no basis of knowing is this true characters or not. It's the most fictional episode we see in the rest of the series, and so yeah, I mean, for me, I'm with you. I think if this was not part of From the Earth to the Moon, and it was its own thing, and I think it's a worthy story to be told, I think it would probably be a lot better than just shoehorning it into the Apollo things. Even if they were doing it in this era and like you could have Apollo 13 as part of it.
Yeah.
It just feels a little bit of a yeah. I mean, I've got a couple of other notes from the episode if you want me to move on to it, unless we've got anything more we want to talk about the journalism here.
Well, I'm looking at my notes and that's right. I didn't write a single word down.
I had a couple of things.
It's the first time I haven't written a single word down at all, which annoys me because I wanted to sit down and I didn't know what I was going into. And when you turned around and said that it was from the people on the Earth, and I was expecting more family talk.
Yeah.
I was expecting more astronauts left on the ground and ground crew and inside the actual mission control itself. And scientists talking to each other. By the way, we get Ron Howard's brother again, which is awesome.
Yeah. Clint Howard running to the toilet.
That's right. But I wasn't expecting it just to be reporters. And I think that's where I got really demoralized about it.
Well, I mean, I think that ties back into what you were saying before, though, because I think the film touches upon mission control and the families and the scientists pretty well.
That's true. You can't go over or retread all that stuff.
I mean, again, things like the whole, making the lithium hydroxide canister. We're going to make a round peg fit into a square hole using nothing but this. That all is kind of covered quite well in the film. So I think if you're trying to do something different, I mean, I'm with you though. I think it would be perhaps much more interesting if it was an after action report thing, looking back. But again, it comes back to, look, I think that the press is an important part of the Apollo story, and this is probably the only place they could do it. We can argue whether or not the story was the right one to tell, but it is the story they chose to tell. I still prefer this over Apollo 8, well, it's 1968 for myself. But I have two other notes, which I will just mention briefly.
Yeah, go for it.
So the first one was, we have a line from Lovell, apparently, where they say, if they die, this would be the last flight to the moon. They wouldn't do any more missions after this. Do you think that would be the case? If the crew didn't make it, do you think they would have just shut it all down, or would they have redoubled their efforts? What do you think?
Personally, I think it would have shut down for a little while. I do believe they would have gone back again just to prove that they could do it, and just so it doesn't end on a sour note. I don't think that would have entirely stopped production and investigation, etc. The scientific merit of actually just getting there as well. Because at that point, they'd only reached the moon twice.
Yes.
Now, yeah, they did it twice safely, but no, I think it would have carried on. Otherwise they would have shut everything down after Apollo 1.
Well, no, Apollo 1, they hadn't made it to the moon yet.
No, they hadn't, but it was...
But at this point, they have won. They've beaten the Soviets to the moon. And we know, again, from the film and, from people are already asking, well, we've won. Why are we still funding this? Because it wasn't cheap. And, they had a war were busy fighting, for good or for ill. So, obviously, I wish they hadn't stopped. I wish they were still doing it today. Yeah. But, I don't know if they had died, if they might have used it as an excuse to just shut the whole program down. I don't know. But it was just wanted to ask you your thoughts.
I would like to think if they had, then they would have had to at least gone back at least once more to prove that they could do it again.
Yeah. The other thing was we get mention of an unmanned probe to Neptune.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I think they're talking about the Voyager probes. Again, this is all largely fictionalized, but yeah, the only time we've been to Neptune has been the Voyager 2, because Voyager 1 did Jupiter and Saturn and then shot off.
That's right, yeah.
Out of the atmosphere. But yeah, that's kind of like where a lot of our focus has been on space exploration since Apollo. Yeah. And interestingly enough, just recently, they fired up the engines on Voyager for the first time in 37 years.
I read this on the Great Derelict, funny enough.
Yes. Basically, the first time they'd used the engines since 1980, and they still worked. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is. Yep. Didn't they fire out because the main engines that they use, they need heaters, don't they? And so they need to prove another way of moving the spacecraft. It's
actually the other way around. So the main attitude control thrusters, again, which they've been using for the last 40 years, basically they have to keep the dish pointing straight at the Earth because it takes 17 minutes, I think. Is it 17 minutes or 17 hours? It takes a long ass time. I'm guessing 17 hours. 17 hours for a signal at light speed to reach Voyager, and then 17 hours for it to come back again. Mm-hmm. And what's happening is the dish has to be like precisely pointed at the Earth for any hope of getting it. So they have the attitude control thrusters keep pointing it, but they started to degrade. So it needs longer and longer thrusts to maintain that. So what they did is they fired up retrograde thrusters, which were what they originally used to slingshot.
Yep.
And these require heaters. And so they fired them up individually and they all worked. So what they're going to do is they're going to use those while they still have power for the heaters. They reckon they'll probably run out of power on those in the next 5 or so years.
Yep.
Then they'll go back to the attitude thrusters until, they die. And then game over, man.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. Crazy. I love it, but yeah, we're still nowhere near a different star.
Yeah. Not in any of our lifetimes, unless it encounters a wormhole and then comes back in the future as Vija.
That's the Star Trek, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, nice little mention of that probe there. And again, just little interesting thing. But yeah, I mean, that was basically it. Again, I was on a plane for 12 hours, watched it, and I was like, fuck.
Yeah, okay, all right, I've got a question about this episode, because there is a bit where they're trying to drop the question of the unmanned space probe to Neptune. Uh-huh. So why was Brett more interested in that? Why did he see that as a way to get in and speak to the other guy who's trying to leak that story? Were they trying to cover up the bad news with good news?
Well, basically, the guy who was there, played by Neelix from Star Trek Voyager, Ethan Phillips, I think it is.
I wouldn't have a clue.
Well, he was. But anyway, I don't know what's happened, but apparently he is a persona non gratis at NASA.
Okay.
He's someone who's managed to annoy them, and they're like, what the hell are you doing here? And he's like, well, I work for the vice president now, so you have to put up with me.
Mm.
So again, I don't know if based on a real person or anything like that. I presume so. But he's there with his own agenda, and his agenda is he doesn't want them spending money on manned space missions. He wants to spend money on unmanned missions. Because again, there's only limited funds available to NASA. If you're funding Apollo, you're not funding Voyager, basically. So he's there with that, and he's trying to get traction, but no one wants to give him the traction because A, NASA doesn't like him, and B, the journalists are more interested in, will Apollo 13 make it back safe?
Yeah,
that stuff there. They're trying to help NASA spin their narrative. He has his own agenda. Brett's doesn't give a fuck about NASA's agenda, though. Mm. So he's like, oh, yeah, I'll give you some traction if you want. And you'll do that. And the way he presents it as if NASA has already agreed to this. He goes, I've just been told the administration is going to support plans for a mission to Neptune. And NASA's not signed on with this yet. But the way it's reported, it's like, well, this is happening.
Yeah, which is bullshit news again.
Pretty much. So that's and again, in return for that, they'll do favors for him down the line and make sure he, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's more of his attack and how to get in there, isn't it? Oh, man. Fucking journalists. If you're a journalist and listen to this, I do apologise. I'm not meant to ragging on you at all.
To be fair, I only apologise if you're a good journalist, not like Max.
Yeah.
Brett, sorry. If you like Brett, fuck off. You're not allowed to listen to us anymore. Go away.
So, in the journey of From the Earth to the Moon, is this what I would encounter as the worst episode that I'm expecting to see, or what?
From what I remember, yes.
Yeah.
The last episode is very different narratively to the other ones, but I always enjoy it, partly because Tom Hanks is in it.
Yep.
Partly because it's kind of quirky and I like it. And I'm going to try and get a special guest on for that last episode, which I'll talk to you later on.
Yes, I think I know who it is, yes.
Yeah, you know who it is. But that's for the last one. So I think you'll like that one more than this. I maintain this is better than 1968, but it is certainly the second worst episode for my money.
Okay.
Which is a shame because the film is so good. But I guess, if you're doing Earth to the Moon, you could probably skip this episode entirely and instead watch Apollo 13 now.
Oh, well, if I ever do get around to watching this again, then yeah, I'm just going to stick Apollo 13 there instead.
Yes, just stick it here. Just go, there you go.
Yeah, it makes much more sense. It's kind of a filler episode, isn't it? All the good stuff's been done in the movie, but we need to recognize Apollo 13. So how do we do that? It should do this. It's just
I don't know why though, because again they skipped over Apollo 10. You can skip over 13. You've done it once. It'll be fine. In fact, give us an Apollo 10 episode and skip this one.
There you go. I'm glad you mentioned that because I saw the film The Last Man on the Moon.
Oh, it's good, isn't it?
Yes, really good. And they go into a little bit more depth of Apollo 10. In fact, it's probably about 100% more in depth than what From the Earth to the Moon did as well. So that was interesting. That's
a documentary film, and it's on Netflix still, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's where I saw it.
And it's all about man looks up thing on the internet trying to get his name because he died recently.
He died last January.
Gene Cernan.
Yep.
Who was one of the Apollo 17 astronauts. And yeah, it's just a great little documentary kind of following him and just talking about his life. I highly recommend it. So check it out.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Well, I will let you continue to drive this thing because I think I've said it. I think
we've said just about all there is to say on that one. That is all there is, in fact.
Good.
That was last week's episode. Anyway. Incidentally, just very briefly, have you, because you weren't overly keen on Apollo 12, have you maybe reevaluated that episode?
I have. I suppose in the light of this one, yes. It's not one I would look forward to watching, but I think I need to watch it again in the future to appreciate it a bit more. And I get its quirkiness, and I think, the next time I watch it, I'll enjoy it a lot more. But it's not the worst. The one we've seen this week has been the worst for me. It just doesn't resonate with me whatsoever.
Nah, I totally get that and absolutely understand entirely, sir. No problem at all. But yes, let us put Apollo 13 to bed finally. Next time out, we're going to be doing Apollo 14. you see, it's complicated to keep up, but I trust all of you can do. The episode for Miles and Miles, which I have no recollection of at all. So that'll be fun getting to. Have you got anything to plug, sir?
Have I got anything to plug? Yes, you can pop along to road2media.com and you can find all the shows that myself and Andy do over there. And also pop along to the blackdogpodcast.com where myself and 3 other idiots talk about movies. And we just got a nice Twitter review about that as well. So that was nice to see this morning. We also have a Patreon. So if you want to keep the lights on over at Road2 Media, which keeps the lights on for all the shows that we do, including all the future shows that we will be doing in the future. Weirdly, I hadn't worked out that sentence until I actually said it. Yeah, you can pop along there and drop us a buck, chuck a buck, leave some shekels for an ex-leper, etc., either via the PayPal or via Patreon as well. So pop along to the show notes and you'll find all the details over there. So there we go.
And remember, if you get us to $2 billion a month, we will actually go to the moon.
There we go. Yes,
and,
that is
and record an episode live.
firm promise. Yes. What we'd do, we'll go up to the moon. And do you remember that picture of the cartoon of the guy on the moon with the face shield, and then he had the microphone outside of his helmet? We'll do that just to prove that it wouldn't work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We will totally do that. So there you go.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can find me at Rogue 2 Media with Elton, also at the Great Derelict, which you can find a link to on Rogue 2 Media. So yes, just go there, and all the stuff is there, and listen to things and places. So yes, anyway, I think that's everything for this month, this week.
Certainly is.
Thank you very much, sir.
Hey, you're more than welcome. Looking forward to the next one.
Yes, because the next one, whatever it is going to be better than this one. So it just leaves me to say, I should go.